Both pilots are dead. The flight attendant's scream cut through the darkness at 2:47 a.m. 256 passengers. 38,000 feet. No one could fly. Then a woman in a black leather jacket stood from the back row. "Call sign Nighthawk," she said. "I can fly." Everyone froze. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The woman in seat 32F didn't want to be noticed. She wore a black leather jacket, even though the cabin was warm. Dark jeans. Combat boots that looked normal enough but weren't. Her hair was shorter than it used to be, touching her shoulders, dark brown and unremarkable. No makeup. Sunglasses resting on top of her head even though it was 2:47 in the morning. Her ticket said Rachel Morgan. That wasn't her real name. She sat in the very back row of American Airlines Flight 1847, a red-eye from Los Angeles to Miami. Back row, window seat, where she could see everyone. Where no one could sit behind her. Where she had a clear view of every person who walked down that aisle. The seat next to her, 32E, was empty. She'd paid extra for that. The man in 32D, an older guy with white hair and a rumpled suit, had fallen asleep before takeoff. He hadn't moved in 3 hours. Most of the cabin was dark. Most passengers were sleeping. It was a red-eye flight. People don't talk on red-eye flights. They close their eyes and try to forget they're trapped in a metal tube 7 miles above the earth. Rachel stared out the window at the darkness. Total darkness. No cities below. No lights. Just black emptiness and her own reflection staring back at her. She saw a woman who looked tired. A woman who looked like she was running from something. Because she was. For 18 months, Rachel Morgan had lived quietly. She worked as a barista in a coffee shop in suburban Los Angeles. She lived in a small apartment with furniture that wasn't hers. She checked in with her handler every Wednesday at 3 p.m., a U.S. Marshal named Torres who asked if she'd seen anyone suspicious, if anyone had asked questions about her past, if she felt safe. She always said yes. She always lied. Because Rachel Morgan wasn't safe. Rachel Morgan was a ghost. A fake identity created by the federal government to hide someone who knew too much, someone who'd seen too much, someone powerful people wanted dead. Rachel Morgan was in the Witness Protection Program. And her real name, the name she hadn't spoken out loud in 18 months, was Elena Cross. Major Elena Cross. United States Air Force. AC-130 gunship pilot. Call sign, Nighthawk. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to remember. But memory doesn't care what you want. Memory comes anyway, especially at 2:47 in the morning when you're alone in the dark. The AC-130 wasn't a normal airplane. It wasn't designed to carry passengers or cargo. It was designed to kill. The AC-130 gunship was a flying weapons platform, a massive cargo plane converted into close air support aircraft. It carried cannons, howitzers, precision-guided weapons. It flew at night over enemy territory, circling overhead while special operations forces fought on the ground below. The AC-130 was called the Angel of Death by enemies. Guardian Angel by the troops it protected. Elena had flown 94 combat missions in the AC-130. 94 nights over Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. 94 missions where American troops on the ground were in trouble, outnumbered, taking fire, and they called for Nighthawk. Because Nighthawk could see in total darkness. The AC-130 flew with no lights. Total blackout. The crew used thermal imaging, night vision, infrared sensors. They could see enemies hiding in buildings, behind walls, in trenches. They could identify targets in complete darkness and eliminate them with precision so perfect that friendly forces 50 meters away wouldn't even feel the blast. Elena earned her call sign on her 7th mission. A special forces team was pinned down in a Taliban compound in eastern Afghanistan. Taking casualties. Running out of ammunition. They transmitted, "We need air support now or we're not making it out." Elena flew into the area in total darkness. No moon. No lights. Nothing but blackness and the thermal imaging screen showing heat signatures. She found the enemy positions. She eliminated them. 40mm cannon fire so accurate that the Taliban fighters were neutralized while American troops 50 meters away weren't even touched by debris. The Special Forces commander transmitted, "I don't know who you are, but you hunt in the dark better than we do on the ground. You're not a pilot. You're a predator." The name stuck. Nighthawk. The pilot who sees in the dark. The pilot who hunts what others can't find. For 8 years, Elena was the most requested AC-130 pilot in special operations. Navy SEALs wanted her overhead. Delta Force wanted her. Army Rangers wanted her. Because when Nighthawk was circling above, you knew you'd make it home. Her crew was legendary. Captain Marcus Chen, call sign Razor, her co-pilot. 32 years old, married, 2 kids. He could calculate bombing solutions in his head faster than the computers could. He'd once landed an AC-130 with 2 engines out and hydraulics failing. He never panicked. Never raised his voice. In 94 missions, Elena had never seen Marcus look scared. Tech Sergeant David Torres, call sign Wrench, flight engineer. 28 years old, engaged to a teacher in North Carolina. He knew every system on the AC-130. Could fix anything mid-flight with duct tape and determination. He'd once kept a damaged fuel system working for 3 hours through sheer willpower and improvisation. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, call sign Scope, sensor operator. 26 years old, enlisted straight out of MIT. Genius with computers and targeting systems. She could identify a target from thermal signature alone. She'd once spotted an enemy sniper hiding in a water tank, something no one else would have seen. She saved a SEAL team that night. Staff Sergeant James Mitchell, call sign Hammer, aerial gunner. 34 years old, from Texas, 6'4", looked like he could bench press the aircraft. He operated the cannons with precision that seemed impossible for someone his size. Gentle off-duty. Deadly in combat. They flew 94 missions together. 0 friendly casualties when Nighthawk was overhead. They were a family. And then came Mission 95. September 14th. 2 years ago. Syria. Night operation supporting a classified special operations raid. The AC-130 had been equipped with new night vision targeting systems, upgraded hardware from a military contractor called Apex Defense Systems. The systems had been fast-tracked through testing. Apex's CEO had connections in Congress. The military had signed a $400 million contract. Elena noticed problems during pre-flight. The thermal imaging was flickering. The night vision sensors showed intermittent failures. She reported it to her commanding officer. She was told, equipment is certified. Mission proceeds. They launched. 20 minutes into the mission, the targeting systems failed completely. Total blackout. The AC-130, an aircraft designed to hunt in darkness, was flying blind at night over hostile territory. Elena tried to abort. Requested immediate return to base. Then the warning alarm. SAM launch. Surface-to-air missile. Enemy air defense that shouldn't have known they were there, but without working stealth systems, the AC-130 was visible on radar. A massive target. Slow-moving. Vulnerable. The missile hit the left wing. Catastrophic damage. Elena felt the aircraft shudder. Heard the explosion. Saw warning lights flood the cockpit: fire, hydraulic failure, engine failure, structural damage. The AC-130 was going down. She fought the controls. Screamed at her crew to bail out. But the explosion had damaged the ejection systems. Marcus tried to manually override the escape hatches. The electrical fire reached his station. He didn't make it out. David tried to deploy the emergency exits. The fuselage broke apart. He was thrown into the night sky without a parachute. Sarah tried to climb toward the escape hatches. The aircraft rolled. She was crushed when the ceiling collapsed. James got his parachute deployed. But it was damaged. It didn't open fully. He hit the ground too hard, too fast. Elena ejected at the last second. Her parachute opened. She landed hard in hostile territory. Dislocated shoulder. Broken ribs. Bleeding. But alive. She hid in a cave for 48 hours. No water. No food. Injured. Alone. A special forces team extracted her on the third day. 4 crew members dead. Only the pilot survived. The official military report said, equipment malfunction. Catastrophic systems failure. Pilot error contributing to delayed abort decision. Pilot error. They blamed Elena. She was grounded pending investigation. But Elena knew the truth. The night vision systems were faulty. Apex Defense had sold defective equipment to the military. They'd rushed testing. Falsified safety reports. Cut corners to save money and meet contract deadlines. And Marcus, David, Sarah, and James paid with their lives. Elena started investigating. She found evidence. Internal Apex emails showing engineers warning about system failures. Test data that had been altered. Apex executives overriding safety concerns to hit delivery schedules. She brought the evidence to her superiors. She expected support. She got threats instead. Drop this investigation, Major. Apex has powerful friends. You're a pilot who survived while her crew died. Nobody's going to believe you over a major defense contractor. Let it go or your career is over. Elena refused. She went to the Inspector General. Filed formal complaints. Prepared to testify. 3 days later, someone tried to kill her. Car bomb in the parking lot of her apartment building. Elena survived because she'd gone running that morning instead of leaving for base immediately. Her car exploded while she was 2 miles away, on a trail in the woods, headphones in, unaware. She came back to find fire trucks and police. Her car was a twisted, burning wreck. The official report said, random act of terrorism. Unrelated to military service. Elena knew better. Apex was trying to silence her. If the military wouldn't protect her, she needed to disappear. She contacted the FBI. Offered to testify against Apex in exchange for witness protection. The FBI was already investigating Apex for multiple defense contract frauds. Elena's testimony, a decorated combat pilot with evidence of falsified safety reports, would be devastating. The trial was scheduled for 6 months away. Until then, witness protection. New identity. Total secrecy. Elena Cross died. Officially. Killed in a training accident. Body cremated. Quiet military funeral. A few people attended, old colleagues who didn't know the truth, who thought Elena had died in some accident the military couldn't talk about for security reasons. Rachel Morgan was born. Civilian. No military history. Living in witness protection in a safe house in suburban California. For 18 months, Rachel lived quietly. No flying. No contact with former military colleagues. No using her real name. She worked as a barista. Made lattes. Smiled at customers. Pretended to be normal. She lived in a small apartment. Checked in with her handler weekly. Tried not to think about flying. Tried not to think about Marcus, David, Sarah, James. Tried not to think about the fact that she was alive and they were dead. The trial kept getting delayed. Apex's lawyers filed motion after motion. Continuances. Postponements. Dragging out the process. And then, 2 weeks ago, her handler told her, "We need to move you." Apex's legal team has been asking questions about the dead pilot who might not be dead. "We're relocating you to Miami. New safe house. New identity. You leave in 2 weeks." So here she was. Flying to Miami. Red-eye flight. Fewer passengers. Darkness. Easier to stay unnoticed. She just wanted to get to Miami. Stay hidden. Wait for the trial to finally happen. She just wanted to survive. At 2:47 a.m., everything changed. The scream from the cockpit was raw panic. "Oh God! Captain! Captain, wake up!" Rachel's eyes snapped open. She'd been dozing, her forehead pressed against the cold window. That scream wasn't normal. That was terror. The forward galley curtain flew open. A flight attendant, young man, maybe 25, name tag, Kevin, stumbled out. His face was white. His hands were shaking. "Is there a doctor? We need a doctor now." 3 passengers responded. A woman in scrubs. A man who said he was a paramedic. An older gentleman who said he was a retired surgeon. They rushed toward the cockpit. Rachel watched from her seat. Something was wrong. Very wrong. 2 minutes passed. Then Kevin appeared again. This time he was screaming. "Does anyone know how to fly an airplane? The pilots are unconscious. We need someone who can fly right now." The cabin erupted. Screaming. Panic. Parents grabbing their children. People crying. Someone shouted, "We're going to crash," and the panic spread like wildfire. Rachel's hands gripped her armrests so hard her knuckles went white. Both pilots unconscious. That wasn't a coincidence. That wasn't medical emergency. That was poisoning. Her tactical mind, dormant for 18 months, activated instantly. Assessment, deliberate attack. Both pilots targeted simultaneously. Means someone on this aircraft poisoned them. Means there's a hostile in the cabin. Means this isn't random. Means this is targeted. Means they're after me. Rachel's blood ran cold. Apex found her. They tracked her to this flight somehow. They poisoned the pilots to crash the plane. Kill everyone aboard. Make it look like a tragic accident. Eliminate their witness permanently. No evidence. No investigation. Just a crashed aircraft and 256 dead passengers. She had 2 choices. Choice 1, stay hidden. Let the plane crash. Die with everyone else but maintain her cover. Choice 2, reveal herself. Save the plane. Expose that she's alive and become a target again. She looked around the cabin. 256 passengers. She could see them in the dim emergency lighting. Families. A mother holding a baby. 2 kids in superhero pajamas, crying. An elderly couple holding hands, praying. A teenage girl gripping her phone, tears streaming down her face. Innocent people. People who had no idea they were aboard an aircraft rigged to crash. Marcus. David. Sarah. James. Her crew's faces flashed in her memory. They died because of corporate greed. Because Apex put profit over safety. Because the military didn't protect them. Elena survived. And survival meant responsibility. Survival meant she didn't get to hide when people needed saving. Rachel unbuckled her seatbelt. Stood. Her voice cut through the panic, calm, commanding, military. I can fly. The entire cabin went silent. Every head turned toward her. Kevin spun around, eyes wide. You can. Are you a pilot? Rachel walked forward slowly. The black leather jacket. The combat boots. The sunglasses on her head at 2 a.m. She looked dangerous. I'm a pilot, she said. Military. Combat missions. I can fly. What's your name? Kevin asked desperately. Rachel paused at the cockpit door. Using her call sign meant exposure. Meant the wrong people would know she's alive. Meant everything she'd hidden for 18 months would be revealed. But 256 lives were staring at her. She looked directly at Kevin and said words she hadn't spoken in 2 years. Call sign Nighthawk. The elderly man in seat 32D, the one who'd been sleeping beside her, froze. Rachel saw it in her peripheral vision. The slight tensing of his shoulders. The way his breathing changed. The way his hand moved toward his jacket pocket. 3 rows ahead, a man in a business suit stopped moving. In the forward galley, a flight attendant's hand moved toward her bag. Rachel saw all of it. Because Nighthawk was trained to hunt in the dark. To notice the smallest details. The slightest movements. The patterns that didn't fit. And she just announced herself to the predator hiding in this cabin. Kevin grabbed her arm. Nighthawk. Like a military call sign. Yes, Rachel said, not taking her eyes off the cabin. Now let me into that cockpit. The doctors were working frantically over the 2 pilots. Both were slumped in their seats, unconscious, breathing but unresponsive. The woman in scrubs looked up. Poison. I don't know what kind, but they're showing symptoms of neurotoxin exposure. Slow heartbeat, respiratory depression, unresponsive pupils. They need to land immediately and get to a hospital. Rachel scanned the instruments. Everything was functioning. Autopilot engaged. Aircraft stable at 38,000 feet. Airspeed normal. Fuel normal. Systems normal. But the navigation display showed they were over West Texas. Miles from any major airport. Darkness in all directions. No visual landmarks. How long until they wake up? Rachel asked. The doctor shook her head. They might not wake up. Whatever they ingested is shutting down their nervous systems. They need immediate medical intervention or they could die. Then I'm landing this plane, Rachel said. She slid into the captain's seat. Adjusted it. Her hands found switches and buttons from pure muscle memory. The AC-130 cockpit was different from a Boeing 767, but flying was flying. Principles were the same. She keyed the radio. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. American 1847, both pilots incapacitated, suspected poisoning. I'm a passenger taking command of the aircraft. Military pilot, qualified on multi-engine aircraft. Requesting immediate emergency vectors and medical response. The response came immediately. American 1847, this is Houston Center. Confirm emergency. What is your flight qualification? Rachel took a breath. AC-130 gunship pilot. 94 combat missions. Call sign Nighthawk. Silence. Dead silence on the frequency. Then a different voice, military frequency bleeding over civilian. American 1847, this is Sentry Lead, Air Force E-3 AWACS monitoring your sector. Did you say call sign Nighthawk? Rachel's jaw tightened. They knew that call sign. Everyone in Air Force Special Operations knew that call sign. Affirmative, Sentry Lead. Ma'am. Nighthawk was declared Kia 2 years ago in an AC-130 crash in Syria. Are you saying? I'm saying Major Elena Cross is alive, I'm aboard American Airlines Flight 1847, and someone just poisoned both pilots trying to crash this flight and kill me. I need immediate tactical support and threat assessment because there's a hostile in this cabin right now." Another pause. Then a new voice. Older. Authority. "Nighthawk, this is General Marcus Webb, Air Force Special Operations Command. We've been monitoring this frequency. We've been trying to locate you for 18 months. Federal authorities said you were in protective custody but wouldn't give us details. Are you safe?" "Negative, General," Rachel said. "Someone poisoned these pilots. That's a targeted attack. They're trying to kill me and crash this plane to cover it. I need F-15 escort immediately and security sweep of this aircraft upon landing. F-15 scrambling from Dyess Air Force Base. ETA 8 minutes. Nighthawk, can you land at 767? Rachel looked at the instruments. At the darkness outside. At the sleeping passengers depending on her. "Sir, I've landed AC-130s with engines on fire and half the hydraulics gone. I've landed in sandstorms and under enemy fire. I can land anything. But I need you to run passenger manifest analysis. Cross-reference against Apex Defense Systems employees and known associates. The person who poisoned these pilots is in this cabin. Running analysis now. Nighthawk, it's good to hear your voice. We thought we'd lost you. You almost did, sir. But Nighthawk doesn't die easy." She paused. "And tonight, someone's about to learn why I earned that call sign." Rachel made an announcement over the cabin intercom. Her voice was calm. Authoritative. The voice of someone who'd commanded crews in combat. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Major Elena Cross, call sign Nighthawk, United States Air Force. I'm a military pilot and I'm taking command of this aircraft. Both pilots were poisoned, deliberately. That means someone on this plane is responsible. We will be landing in approximately 35 minutes. I need everyone to remain calm and follow instructions exactly. Nobody moves from their seats. Nobody goes to the bathrooms. Nobody stands up. Flight attendants, I need you to watch every passenger. If anyone moves, you report to me immediately. The person who did this is in this cabin right now. They wanted this plane to crash. They wanted everyone dead. But that's not happening. Because I don't let innocent people die." The cabin was silent. 256 passengers frozen in fear. Rachel kept one hand on the controls. The other on the radio. Her eyes swept the instruments but her mind was hunting. Who poisoned the pilots? How? When? She keyed the intercom to the flight attendants. "Kevin, what did the pilots eat or drink in the last 2 hours?" Kevin's voice shook. They both drank coffee. "From the crew galley. About 45 minutes ago. Right before their scheduled break." "Who made the coffee?" "It was already made when I got there. The pot was full. Could have been anyone. Passengers aren't supposed to access that galley, but people do it anyway when they're looking for the bathroom." Rachel's tactical mind processed. Someone poisoned the coffee. Knew the pilot's schedule. Knew when they'd drink it. Timed it so they'd collapse mid-flight, over remote terrain, in total darkness. They wanted this plane to crash with no survivors. No witnesses. She transmitted to General Webb. "General, I need that manifest analysis now. Who on this flight has connections to Apex Defense?" 30 seconds passed. Rachel could hear typing in the background, computer systems searching databases. Then. "Nighthawk, we found 3 names. Seat 14B, Thomas Brennan, former Apex security consultant, retired 6 months ago. Seat 22C, Linda Hayes, current Apex legal team member. And Seat 32D, Martin Cross." Rachel's heart stopped. Seat 32D. The elderly man sitting next to her. The one who'd been sleeping the entire flight. General, did you say Martin Cross? Affirmative. Martin Cross, age 64, retired military contractor. Records show he's my uncle, Rachel finished, her voice cold. My father's brother. Who testified for Apex during the preliminary investigation 2 years ago. Who told the inquiry board that I was lying about the equipment failures. Who said I was just trying to blame someone else for my crew's deaths. She spun in her seat, looking back through the cockpit door into the cabin. Seat 32D was empty. Martin was gone. Kevin. Rachel shouted into the intercom. Where is the passenger from seat 32D? Kevin's panicked voice crackled back, I don't know. I don't see him. Wait, oh God, the cargo access hatch is open. Rachel's blood ran ice cold. The cargo access hatch led down into the belly of the aircraft. To the electronics bay. To the hydraulic systems. To the flight control computers. Martin was going to sabotage the aircraft so she couldn't land it. She had seconds to decide. Stay in the cockpit and fly. Or go after Martin and stop him. She made the choice a combat pilot would make. The choice Nighthawk would make. She keyed the radio. General Webb, I'm putting this aircraft on autopilot heading to El Paso. Vector me to the longest runway available. I'm going into the cabin to stop a sabotage attempt. Nighthawk, you can't leave the cockpit. You're the only one who can fly that plane. Sir, if Martin reaches the electronics bay and cuts the hydraulics, this aircraft becomes unflyable anyway. I have maybe 3 minutes before he reaches critical systems. I'm going hunting. She set the autopilot. Locked the heading. Verified altitude and airspeed. Then she grabbed the fire extinguisher from the cockpit wall, the only weapon available, and moved into the cabin. Passengers screamed as she ran past. A woman shouted, "Where are you going? You said you'd fly us." Rachel didn't stop, "I will. But first I have to stop the man trying to kill us all." She reached the rear galley. The cargo access door was open, a small hatch in the floor with a narrow ladder leading down into darkness. Rachel looked down. Total blackness below. She couldn't see anything. The cargo hold had no lights. Just darkness. For most people, that would be terrifying. For Nighthawk, it was home. She descended into the darkness. The cargo hold was pitch black. Rachel's boots hit the metal floor. She couldn't see her own hands in front of her face. The fire extinguisher felt heavy in her grip. But she didn't need to see. She'd spent 8 years hunting in darkness. Learning to use her other senses. Learning to hear breathing patterns. Footsteps. The sound of fabric moving. Heartbeats. She stood perfectly still. Listened. There. Breathing. Maybe 30 feet ahead. Moving toward the electronics bay at the rear of the cargo hold. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Someone trying to be quiet. Martin, Rachel called into the darkness. I know you're here. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then her uncle's voice, from somewhere in the blackness. You should have stayed dead, Elena. His voice was cold. Nothing like the uncle she remembered from childhood. The man who taught her to ride a bike. Who'd come to her high school graduation. Who'd congratulated her when she got into the Air Force Academy. That man was gone. This was someone else. You were supposed to die in that crash with your crew, Martin continued. When you survived, you became a problem. Apex couldn't risk you testifying. The trial kept getting delayed, but eventually it would happen. You'd destroy the company. Cost billions. Ruin careers. We couldn't allow that. Rachel moved silently through the darkness, triangulating his position by sound. You killed 4 people, she said. Marcus. David. Sarah. James. My crew. Your own niece's crew. Because Apex sold faulty equipment. They died doing their jobs, Martin said, and Rachel could hear him moving now, continuing toward the electronics bay. Soldiers die. That's what happens in war. You're the one who couldn't let it go. You had to investigate. Had to play hero. Had to threaten a multi-billion-dollar company. Now 256 people die because you wouldn't stay hidden. They die if you sabotage this aircraft, Rachel corrected, moving closer through the darkness. But you're not going to reach those systems. You can't see me, Elena. It's pitch black down here. You're stumbling around in the dark while I'm 10 feet from the hydraulic controls. In 30 seconds, I cut those lines and this plane becomes a brick. You can't land it. You can't save them. You all die. And Apex's problem goes away. Rachel smiled in the darkness. Martin, you made one critical mistake. What's that? You forgot what Nighthawk means. She heard him reach the electronics panel. Heard him opening something. A tool bag maybe. It means you flew at night, Martin said. So what? This is a cargo hold, not a combat zone. You don't have thermal imaging. You don't have night vision. You're just a woman in the dark. Wrong, Rachel said quietly. She was moving now. Silent. Fast. Using the sounds he made to track him precisely. Nighthawk doesn't mean I flew at night. It means I hunted in total darkness. It means I spent 8 years tracking targets in conditions exactly like this. It means I learned to see without eyes. She heard him pause. It means I know exactly where you are. She threw the fire extinguisher. In the total darkness, she couldn't see it fly. But she didn't need to. She knew exactly where Martin was standing. She'd tracked him by sound, by breathing, by the tiny movements he made. The extinguisher hit him hard. She heard the impact. Heard him grunt. Heard tools clatter to the floor. Rachel was on him in 2 seconds. Combat training. Muscle memory. Takedown moves practiced 10,000 times in Air Force hand-to-hand combat courses. She had him on the ground in the darkness. Knee in his back. His arm twisted behind him at an angle that made him gasp in pain. The Navy SEALs I supported called me their guardian angel, she said quietly. Because when Nighthawk was overhead, they knew they'd survive. They knew someone was watching them in the dark. Someone who could see threats they couldn't see. Tonight, 256 passengers are going to survive. Not because of fancy equipment or technology. But because Nighthawk learned to hunt without any of that. Just skill. Just training. Just 8 years of finding enemies in total darkness. She found cargo netting on the wall. Used the straps to zip-tie Martin's hands behind his back. You thought darkness would protect you, she said. But darkness is where I'm most dangerous. She dragged him back through the cargo hold toward the ladder. Kevin was waiting at the top with 2 other flight attendants. They pulled Martin up. Restrained him properly. Passengers stared in shock. Rachel climbed back up. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash. But her voice was steady. Hostile secured. Nobody else moves. We're landing in 20 minutes. She returned to the cockpit. The doctors were still working on the pilots. No change. Rachel slid back into the captain's seat. General Webb's voice came through immediately. Nighthawk, report. We heard shouting. Hostile secured, General. It was my uncle. Martin Cross. He was trying to sabotage the hydraulics. He won't be a problem anymore. Copy that. F-15s have visual on your aircraft. El Paso International is ready. Longest runway, emergency crews standing by. FBI and U.S. Marshals will be waiting. Good. Rachel paused. General, based on this attack, I'm assuming my cover is completely blown. Affirmative. Every intelligence agency monitoring this frequency now knows you're alive. Apex will know within the hour. Then there's no point hiding anymore. Rachel's voice was calm. When we land, I'm done with witness protection. I'm testifying. Publicly. Openly. I want every news camera there. I want the world to know what Apex did. The FBI says they can accelerate the trial. Based on tonight's attack, attempted mass murder, they're arresting Apex executives as we speak. Rachel looked at the instruments. At the darkness outside. At the reflection of her own face in the windscreen. My crew deserves justice, General. Marcus, David, Sarah, James. They died because of corporate greed. Because Apex valued profit over lives. Tonight, Apex tried to kill 256 more people to cover it up. I'm bringing these passengers home. And then I'm destroying Apex. Rachel flew the approach manually. No autopilot. No computer assistance. Just her hands on the controls and decades of training. The F-15s flew escort, 2 of them, 1 on each wing. Their position lights were visible in the darkness. Proof that she wasn't alone. At 10,000 feet, Sentry Lead transmitted. Nighthawk, you're cleared for approach. Runway 22, El Paso International. Winds calm. Visibility unlimited. Emergency crews in position. Copy, Sentry Lead. At 5,000 feet, Rachel began her descent. The 767 responded smoothly. All systems functioning. Whoever poisoned the pilots hadn't sabotaged the aircraft itself, they'd planned for the crash to look like pilot incapacitation, not mechanical failure. At 3,000 feet, the lights of El Paso appeared below. The runway was lit up like a landing strip, every emergency vehicle in the city waiting. American 1847, you're on glide path, the tower transmitted. Looking good. At 1,000 feet, Rachel heard General Webb's voice again. Nighthawk, your crew would be proud. Rachel felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away. Not now. Not yet. This one's for them, General. For Marcus, David, Sarah, James. I'm bringing these people home the way I couldn't bring my crew home. At 500 feet, the runway was directly ahead. Rachel adjusted the throttle. Watched the airspeed. Felt the aircraft respond to every input. At 100 feet, she whispered. Marcus, you always said I could land anything. Let's prove it. The wheels touched down. Perfect touchdown. Gentle. Smooth. Rachel applied the brakes gradually. The 767 slowed. The thrust reversers engaged. The aircraft rolled to a stop on the runway. 256 passengers and crew. Safe. For 3 seconds, there was total silence in the cabin. Then the applause started. It began in the front rows and swept backward like a wave. Passengers clapping, crying, cheering. People who'd thought they were going to die. People who'd watched a woman in a leather jacket walk into the cockpit and save their lives. Rachel sat in the captain's seat, hands still on the controls, and finally let herself breathe. Kevin appeared in the cockpit doorway, tears streaming down his face. You did it. You actually did it. Rachel unbuckled. Stood. Her legs were shaking. Get those pilots to the hospital immediately. They need treatment for neurotoxin poisoning. Move. The emergency crews swarmed the aircraft. Paramedics rushed aboard. The poisoned pilots were carried out on stretchers, still unconscious but alive. Martin was taken into FBI custody. Rachel watched through the cockpit window as federal agents led him away in handcuffs. Her uncle. Family. Someone who tried to kill her and 255 innocent people to protect a corporation. General Webb's voice came through one final time. Nighthawk, aircraft secure. FBI wants to debrief you. But Elena, before they take you, I need to say this. What you did tonight reminded me why you earned that call sign. Why every special operations team wanted you overhead. You didn't just land a plane. You hunted a threat in conditions that would paralyze most people. You saved lives. That's what Nighthawk does. Thank you, sir, Rachel said quietly. But I'm done hiding now. Time to finish what I started. The news crews arrived before Rachel even left the aircraft. CNN. Fox News. ABC. NBC. Every major outlet. A U.S. Air Force combat pilot declared dead 2 years ago just landed a poisoned civilian aircraft and stopped an assassination attempt. That wasn't just news. That was headline-grabbing, world-stopping news. The U.S. Marshals tried to escort Rachel to a secure vehicle. Tried to maintain her protection. She refused. No more hiding, she told her handler, Marshal Torres. No more safe houses. No more fake identities. I'm Elena Cross. I'm alive. And I'm testifying. She walked straight to the news cameras. She was still wearing the black leather jacket. Still had dirt on her hands from the cargo hold fight. Still had the exhausted, determined look of someone who just fought for survival at 38,000 feet. A reporter shoved a microphone in her face. Ma'am, is it true you're a military pilot? Can you tell us what happened on that flight? Rachel looked directly into the camera. My name is Major Elena Cross, United States Air Force. Call sign Nighthawk. 2 years ago, I was declared killed in an AC-130 crash in Syria. The reporters went silent. I survived that crash. My crew didn't. Captain Marcus Chen, Tech Sergeant David Torres, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Staff Sergeant James Mitchell. 4 people. 4 of the best aviators I ever knew. They died because a defense contractor called Apex Defense Systems sold faulty equipment to the military. When I tried to expose the truth, Apex tried to kill me. So I went into hiding. Witness protection. Waiting to testify. Tonight, Apex tried again. They poisoned the pilots of Flight 1847 to crash the plane and eliminate me. They were willing to kill 256 innocent people to protect their profits. They failed. Those 256 people are alive. The man who poisoned the pilots, my own uncle, working for Apex, is in federal custody. And I'm done hiding. Another reporter, what happens now? Now I testify. Publicly. I'm going to tell the world exactly what Apex did. How they falsified safety reports. How they sold defective night vision equipment. How they got my crew killed. How they tried to kill me twice. How they tried to murder hundreds of people tonight. Apex Defense Systems executives are facing criminal charges. Their trial starts next week. And I'm going to make sure they spend the rest of their lives in prison. Are you afraid they'll try to kill you again? Rachel smiled grimly. Let them try. I earned my call sign by hunting in the dark. By finding threats others couldn't see. Apex just learned that hiding in the shadows doesn't work when Nighthawk is hunting you. The video went viral within an hour. By morning, it had 50 million views. By the next day, it was the most watched news story in the world. Dead pilot rises, Major Elena Cross saves 256 lives. Nighthawk returns, combat pilot exposes defense contractor conspiracy. Call sign Justice, Air Force hero takes down corporate killers. The public response was overwhelming. Veterans groups rallied behind Elena. Active military personnel shared stories about AC-130 support missions, about how Nighthawk saved their lives in combat. The families of Marcus, David, Sarah, and James reached out. They'd been told for 2 years that the crash was equipment failure and pilot error. Now they knew the truth. Apex Defense Systems stock crashed. Literally. Down 87% in 2 days. The CEO resigned. The board of directors was suspended. Federal investigators seized company records. And the trial, delayed for 18 months, was suddenly fast-tracked. 1 week later. Federal Courthouse. United States versus Apex Defense Systems. The courtroom was packed. News cameras weren't allowed inside, but every seat was filled. Veterans in uniform. Family members of the dead crew. Passengers from Flight 1847 who came to support the woman who saved their lives. Elena sat at the prosecution table wearing her Air Force dress uniform. Full medals. Ribbons. The uniform she hadn't worn in 2 years. The Apex executives sat across the room in expensive suits. Their lawyers, a team of 12, looked confident. Until Elena took the stand. The prosecutor asked, "Major Cross, please tell the court what happened on September 14, 2 years ago." Elena didn't use notes. Didn't need them. "My crew and I were flying a combat support mission in Syria. AC-130 gunship. Night operation supporting special forces on the ground. Our aircraft had been equipped with new night vision targeting systems manufactured by Apex Defense Systems. During pre-flight inspection, I noticed the systems were malfunctioning. Thermal imaging was flickering. Night vision sensors showed intermittent failures. I reported this to my commanding officer. I was told the equipment was certified and the mission would proceed. 20 minutes into the mission, the targeting systems failed completely. Total blackout. The AC-130 is designed to operate in total darkness using those systems. Without them, we were blind. I attempted to abort and return to base. Then we were hit by a surface-to-air missile. Without functioning stealth systems, we were visible on enemy radar. The missile hit our left wing. Catastrophic damage. My crew tried to evacuate. The explosion damaged our ejection systems. Captain Marcus Chen was killed in the initial impact. Tech Sergeant David Torres was killed trying to deploy emergency exits. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was killed when the fuselage broke apart. Staff Sergeant James Mitchell's parachute failed to deploy fully. He died on impact with the ground. I survived. I was the only one. Her voice didn't break. Didn't waver. But everyone in that courtroom could hear the weight behind her words. The prosecutor continued, "What did you discover during your investigation?" I found internal Apex emails showing engineers warning about system failures. Test data that had been falsified. Safety certifications that were fraudulent. Apex executives overrode safety concerns to meet contract deadlines and maximize profits. They knew the equipment was defective. They sold it anyway. And my crew paid with their lives. The defense lawyer stood, "Objection. Major Cross has no engineering expertise. She can't." "I flew 94 combat missions," Elena cut him off. "I use those systems every single night. I know when they're working and when they're not. I know the difference between operator error and equipment failure. And I know when a corporation is lying to cover up their negligence." The judge allowed the testimony to continue. Elena spent 6 hours on the stand. She presented evidence. Emails. Test reports. Engineering documents. Testimony from whistleblowers inside Apex who'd come forward after seeing her news interview. She showed flight data from the crash. Proving the systems failed. Proving she'd reported problems. Proving she tried to abort. She showed the falsified safety certifications. The altered test data. The internal memos where Apex executives discussed acceptable risk levels and cost-benefit analysis of potential casualties. By the end of her testimony, 2 of the Apex executives had gone pale. Their lead lawyer was sweating. The defense tried to cross-examine her. Major Cross, isn't it true that the official military investigation found pilot error contributed to this crash? Yes. Because Apex has political connections. Because they donated to congressional campaigns. Because they hired former military officers as consultants. The investigation was influenced. That's why I went to federal authorities with evidence. You survived and your crew didn't. Isn't it possible you're looking for someone to blame? Elena stared at the lawyer. I blame the corporation that sold equipment they knew was defective. I blame the executives who prioritized profit over safety. I blame the system that allowed them to do it. And when they tried to silence me, first with a car bomb, then by poisoning a civilian aircraft with 256 people aboard, they proved exactly what they're capable of. They're not just negligent. They're murderers. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. But the damage was done. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The verdict came back in 40 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Falsification of safety records. Negligent homicide. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. The CEO, 38 years in federal prison. The VP of Engineering, 32 years. The head of Quality Control, 28 years. 6 other executives, sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. Apex Defense Systems, dissolved. Assets seized. $1.2 billion in fines and victim compensation. When the verdict was read, Elena sat perfectly still. She didn't celebrate. Didn't smile. Because Marcus, David, Sarah, and James were still dead. Justice didn't bring them back. But it meant their deaths weren't meaningless. 6 months later. Arlington National Cemetery. Elena stood at the memorial for her crew. It wasn't a grave, there were no bodies. Marcus, David, and Sarah had been buried separately by their families. James was cremated, his ashes scattered in Texas where he was born. But the Air Force had created a memorial. A stone monument in Arlington with 4 names. Captain Marcus Chin, Razor, Tech Sergeant David Torres, Wrench. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Scope, Staff Sergeant James Mitchell, Hammer. AC-130 crew, Mission 95. They flew into darkness so others could see dawn. Elena placed flowers at the base. 1 for each of them. She heard footsteps behind her. General Marcus Webb approached, wearing his dress uniform. Elena, he said quietly. The trial's over. Apex is destroyed. You got justice for your crew. Justice doesn't bring them back, sir. No. But it means they didn't die for nothing. He paused. The Air Force wants you back. Elena looked at him sharply. As a pilot? No. As an investigator. We're creating a new oversight program. Defense contractor safety and certification. Making sure what happened with Apex never happens again. We want you to lead it. You want me to hunt corrupt contractors the way I hunted targets in the dark. Exactly. General Webb smiled slightly. You proved you're good at finding things people try to hide. We need that. The military needs that. Elena looked back at the memorial stone. I'll do it, she said. Not as a pilot, I'm done flying combat. But as an investigator. I'll make sure no other crew dies because some corporation cut corners for profit. There's one more thing, General Webb said. We want to change your call sign in the official records. Why? Because you're not just Nighthawk anymore. You're not just the pilot who hunted in darkness. You're the pilot who survived. Who exposed corruption. Who saved 256 people. Who brought down a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We want your call sign to reflect that. Elena turned to face him. What did you have in mind? Nighthawk Actual. Because you're not a memory. You're not a ghost. You're real. You're here. You're active. And anyone who thinks they can hide in the shadows should know, Nighthawk is hunting them. Elena felt tears in her eyes. She blinked them back. Nighthawk Actual, she repeated. I like it. She looked up at the sky. 4 F-15s appeared overhead, flying in formation. Then one broke away. Climbed. Disappeared into the clouds. Missing man formation. For the crew that didn't come home. Elena saluted. The F-15s roared overhead, and for a moment, she could almost hear Marcus on the radio, nice flying, Nighthawk. She could almost hear David, told you we'd make it home. She could almost hear Sarah, target acquired. Mission complete. She could almost hear James, guardian angel is watching. We're good. Elena lowered her salute. Rest easy, she whispered. I've got the watch now. Air Force Special Operations Command Headquarters. Hurlburt Field, Florida. Elena sat in her new office. It wasn't a cockpit. It was a desk, computers, filing cabinets full of defense contract documents. But she was hunting again. Her team, 5 investigators, all former military, analyzed every major defense contract. Looking for red flags. Falsified test data. Safety shortcuts. Corporate fraud. In 6 months, they'd flagged 12 contracts for investigation. 3 companies were under federal review. 1 CEO had already resigned. 0 service members had died from equipment failures in Elena's area of oversight. 0. Her phone rang. Colonel Santos, her direct supervisor. Major Cross, we've got a situation. New night vision system being fast-tracked for Navy SEAL deployment. Testing seems rushed. Some engineers are raising concerns but getting overruled. Familiar pattern. Elena felt that old familiar focus sharpen. Send me everything. I'll review it tonight. Elena, it's Friday evening. This can wait until Monday. No, sir. It can't. Because somewhere, there's a SEAL team that's going to use that equipment. And if it's defective, they die. I'm not letting that happen. Understood. Files are coming your way. And Elena? We're lucky to have you. Elena hung up and opened her laptop. The files arrived. She began reading. Test data. Certification reports. Engineering assessments. And there, page 47, a note from an engineer, thermal resolution fails in ambient temperatures above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Recommend additional testing before desert deployment. And the response from management, testing timeline non-negotiable. Proceed with certification. Elena's jaw tightened. She picked up the phone. Made 3 calls. First to the Inspector General. Second to the contracting officer. Third to the SEAL team commander who'd be using the equipment. By Monday morning, the contract was suspended pending full investigation. By Wednesday, the company admitted the thermal resolution issues. By Friday, the contract was cancelled. 0 Navy SEALs died from defective equipment. Because Nighthawk was watching. Elena was invited to speak at the Air Force Academy graduation. She stood at the podium in front of 1,000 new second lieutenants. Young officers. Future pilots. Future leaders. My call sign is Nighthawk Actual, she began. Some of you know the story. Some of you don't. Let me tell you what that name means. It doesn't mean I was the best pilot. It doesn't mean I never made mistakes. It means I learned to see in darkness. To find threats others couldn't see. To protect people who depended on me. 2 years ago, I lost my crew. 4 people. The best aviators I ever knew. They died because a corporation valued profit over safety. When I tried to expose that truth, powerful people tried to silence me. They failed. Because I learned something flying 94 combat missions in total darkness, you can't hide from someone who's learned to see without light. You're graduating today. You're going to lead troops. Fly missions. Make decisions that affect lives. And someday, you might face a choice: stay silent and keep your career safe, or speak up and risk everything. When that moment comes, remember my crew. Remember that doing the right thing isn't always easy. But it's always necessary. The military gave you wings. It taught you to fly. Now use those wings to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Hunt the threats in darkness. Speak truth even when it's dangerous. Because that's what the uniform means. That's what service means. Nighthawk doesn't just hunt enemies overseas. Nighthawk hunts corruption. Negligence. Greed. Anything that threatens the people we swore to protect. Fly well. Fly safe. And never let anyone tell you that profit matters more than lives. The 1,000 cadets stood and applauded. Elena saw tears in some eyes. Determination in others. She saw the future. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt hope. Rachel Morgan no longer existed. Elena Cross was fully public now. Active duty. Leading the Defense Contract Oversight Program. Her team had investigated 47 contracts. Flagged 19 for fraud. Resulted in 12 criminal prosecutions. 0 service members killed by defective equipment in 3 years. The families of Marcus, David, Sarah, and James had become friends. They met annually at Arlington on the anniversary of Mission 95. Elena had testified before Congress twice about defense contractor reform. She'd given interviews on 60 Minutes, Frontline, and CNN. She'd written a book, Hunting in Darkness: One Pilot's Fight Against Corporate Greed. It became a bestseller. All proceeds went to a scholarship fund for children of service members killed by equipment failures. The scholarship was named after her crew. The Nighthawk 4 Scholarship. On a cold November morning, Elena received a phone call. Unknown number. She answered, Major Cross. A young voice, nervous, "Ma'am, my name is Lieutenant Jake Morrison. I'm an AC-130 pilot. I just completed my first combat mission. Before we launched, our commander told us about you. About your crew. About what you did. He said if we ever face equipment problems, we report them immediately. No matter what anyone says. Because Nighthawk taught us that staying quiet costs lives." Elena felt emotion tighten her throat. "Did everything go okay on your mission?" "Yes, ma'am. All systems worked perfectly. The troops we supported came home safe. And I wanted to thank you. Because you made sure we had equipment we could trust. You made sure we came home. That's the job, Lieutenant. Protect the people who protect others. Ma'am, one more thing. My crew wanted you to know, we've adopted a motto. We say it before every mission." "What is it?" "Nighthawk watches. We fly safe." Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. "Fly safe, Lieutenant. And tell your crew, Nighthawk is always watching. Always hunting. Anyone who threatens you, who sells you defective equipment, who puts profit over your lives, they're being hunted. They just don't know it yet." "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you, ma'am." Elena hung up. She looked at the photo on her desk. Her crew. Marcus, David, Sarah, James. All of them smiling. Taken the day before Mission 95. We did it, she whispered. Your deaths meant something. Every pilot who comes home safe, that's because of you. Because you showed me what's worth fighting for. Her computer chimed. New email. Another contract flagged for investigation. Another potential threat. Elena opened the file and started reading. Because Nighthawk doesn't sleep. Nighthawk hunts. And in the darkness of corporate greed, military corruption, and bureaucratic negligence, there's a predator watching. Call sign, Nighthawk Actual. Status, active. Hunting. Unstoppable. This is the story of a pilot who learned that some battles aren't fought in the sky. They're fought in courtrooms, congressional hearings, and oversight offices. Elena Cross proved that call signs are earned, that hunters recognize other hunters, that hiding only works until someone threatens innocence. She proved that Nighthawk doesn't just fly, she eliminates threats. Whether enemy combatants or corporate killers. Because justice doesn't sleep. Neither does the pilot who sees everything in the dark. Nighthawk watches. Always.